15 years in, and the DC SEU is still at it. Still helping DC save money, reduce energy use, and build a cleaner, more affordable future. Together. Did you know they've invested $120 million in low-income communities? They put $99 million in DC-based businesses, too. And they have turned out over 300 graduates trained for the new green workforce. That is economic mobility, y'all. And that is what it's all about. Still here, still redefining power in the district. Find out more at dcseu.com.
Hey, DC. It's CityCast CEO David Plotz. At the end of today's episode, there's a sponsored segment with Richard Reyes Gavilan, the executive director of the DC Public Library, about District Vibes American Pride, which is a citywide exhibition making the case that the American story cannot be told without my hometown of DC. From Marvin Gaye to Charles Drew to the man who invented the football huddle at Gallaudet University. It's brought to you by DC Public Library.
Today on CityCast DC, the movie Heavy Metal Parking Lot turns 40 this year, and it feels weirdly contemporary. If you haven't seen it, the basic setup is this. A couple of guys show up at the parking lot of a Judas Priest show outside DC, and they just let the cameras run as the tailgaters go wild.
That's it. What would you say if you saw Rob Halford right now?
I'd jump his bones.
What do you think?
The difference is this: the cringe behavior that they captured didn't wind up on social media immediately. Instead, it became part of an underground art film that slowly, over the decades, became a cult classic. The filmmakers Jeff Krulik and John Hein are here today. They're going to tell the story of the metal show and what happened next. And after our chat, stick around. Our CEO, David Plotz, is chatting with DC Public Library Executive Director Richard Reyes Gavilan about how the library is celebrating America's 250th birthday. Today is Tuesday, July 21st. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC is talking about. Jeff and John, welcome.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
So it has been 40 years since Judas Priest played the Capitol Center, and you recorded it as Heavy Metal Parking Lot, or at least you recorded the people hanging out outside. For people who don't know, what is this movie?
Well, and a lot of people still don't know it, even though we've been fortunate to have a good run of 40 years now. It's a documentary that we shot pretty much as emerging filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers, in our 20s, that we brought cameras that were available from the public access studio that I was running. John and I had become fast friends. We both wanted to be documentary filmmakers. And we had the tools, these cameras, and I had a studio. John had access to a studio. John went to film school. Yeah, we just took these cameras up to the Capitol Center, the local arena, which was where Judas Priest were playing. It was a spring night in May 31, Saturday night, May 31st, 1986 to be exact. But John and I, it was John's idea to kind of document metal fans. Why don't you tell us, John, what was...
Why metal fans, John? I mean, and for people who don't know, public access, that meant, the cable companies would have like a studio that members of the public could like do a show on. And you ran the studio, so you had access to some cameras. Of all the things in the world to train those cameras on, why the guys with mullets outside a Judas Priest show?
I would probably want to clarify. I don't think we had any intention of making a public access programming. We had essentially, because Jeff ran the candy store, we had access to public access video recording equipment, which was essentially professional caliber equipment that was really hard to get access to anywhere else. So that was the beautiful thing about it. I don't think we thought we'd do public access content for it, but we would use this to create a documentary. How we came about deciding on heavy metal, I'm not exactly quite sure, except I heard ads for this concert on the radio. And I thought that maybe it would be a good, subculture to visit.
Were you guys into metal?
No, not particularly. Not at all.
Not at all.
We were exposed to it. We were aware of it. It was big on FM radio at the time. So you heard it. But I think our preferences lean to, I would speak for myself, preferences lean towards blues, Americana, punk, new wave, whatever, other genres of music besides heavy metal.
So Jeff, John sells you on this idea of let's go do a documentary outside the Judas Priest show. Tell me what it was like when you pulled up. What did you see? What did you do?
Everything just kind of lined up. It was all with our great good fortune that we zeroed in on Judas Priest. We met the people we did, but we didn't have any plan. I mean, John and I didn't, as he said, we were not heavy metal fans per se. This was an era when you kind of saw what was happening on MTV and metal was a thing. And there were plenty of fans. And we were familiar with concert going, having gone to the Capitol Center to see shows and concerts, whatnot. But this was very simple because the studio was close down the street from the Capitol Center. And we just rolled out. Again, John had this idea. I said, let's do it. We drove in on my 1978 Pontiac Bonneville and paid our way like any concert goer would. And when we parked, eventually, we drove around a bit and videotaped people partying or tailgating. And then when we finally got out, it was kind of dumb luck. We basically were able to get with the people we did because we only spent 2 hours there and taped like 65 minutes. We still have all that original footage, but we thought maybe we'd encounter some hostility. We thought, people wouldn't want to be taped. Not everybody was just falling all over themselves when we showed up with the camera.
Well, so what did you encounter? Like what were they saying when you showed up with the camera? What were they doing?
Well, they all
it's this sort of grotesque teenage wasteland,
Well, it was, but it was also, there was a great deal of enthusiasm and warmth and camaraderie. And people thought we were some kind of news crew, but we weren't trying to, put anything over on anybody.
No, we weren't trying to pose as a local TV news crew or anything like that, but they kind of just read it that way. And then they saw us coming up in the parking lot from the distance. And we kind of maybe looked the part of a news crew because we didn't look or dress like them particularly. So we went in there without an agenda really, except to just we're going to do man on the street interviews or metalheads in the parking lot interviews. And that was our approach. And that really is essentially the approach of heavy metal parking lot is interviews in the parking lot.
So the movie comes out and, a lot of these people, they were drunk. They are out of control. They look like idiots. It's a different time. If that happened nowadays, everyone would see the video instantly. It would bounce around the internet. But did the people who were in the movie learn about it? Did you ever hear from them? What was the reaction?
Well, this is many years later. I mean, because it really kind of just percolated through all this. It's had a long history that kind of course, started when we shot it. John we went after we spent 2 hours in the parking lot and the concert was starting. So we left. We had no intention of going to the show. We went back to my studio, started looking at the footage, looking at the tapes. I came up with the name then. It just popped into my head, Heavy Metal Parking Lot. John went with that, and he took the tapes back to his day job and then edited them at night over the course of several months. And then we premiered it October 20th, 1986 at DC Space in DC, which
was like a very cool creative space.
Right, exactly. Kind of a co-op it was a nightclub, but they had a very open kind of programming. It was a bar and a restaurant and a club in the evening, very legendary club now in DC. But they had a bi-weekly film night called IMI. And John, where the policy was anybody, you could bring anything and screen anything. And John had enough presence of mind to kind of get them on board to promote it, because John set this up so they could actually market it as the kind of premiere of Heavy Metal Parking Lot.
So did you ever hear from, did you hear from the subjects?
Well, it took a long time for that. It really did.
It did. This was before the internet, so
right. So when you first heard, what kind of reactions did you get?
Email was happening. This was in the 90s. So, email. He wrote us on email.
And then by the time, email and internet kicked in, it was able to reach a wider audience, or people found out about it. Got some more visibility. Although I would say we started getting some press or, print press mentions in the 90s from like Spin magazine.
These people you filmed, and this movie feels very contemporary right now, because this notion of sort of taking a camera somewhere and letting it run and letting people be their true selves and it goes viral is a very of the moment thing. It was much harder to pull off when you did because of the bulkiness of the equipment and all of that. But that's what you did. And it was sort of passed around, sort of black market style, traded. And, it's had this afterlife, and I'm curious about the people in it. So what kind of lives did they go on to lead? Because I know that when you made this anniversary event, you had some of them come.
We've been fortunate, again, like John said, it's through the internet and through our presence online that people have reached out over the years. And we've got a pretty solid family, if you will, alumni.
Mm-hmm. And what do they think of it?
They're all very nostalgic and very, look back with fondness and have, been really receptive to opportunities to attend screenings, but it's not across the board. Some people don't want to participate. They're very but I think everybody who's been located, for the most part, your old colleague, Dave McKenna, did this tremendous piece in Deadspin. He did this tremendous deep dive, this exhaustive look into, and contacted a lot of people with some of the assistants that we had. But they're all, really much to a
they've all gone on a lead pretty much, for the most part, normal and productive lives. It's pretty remarkable. A lot of them do wear it as a badge of honor on their sleeves. And some of them I'd say still are into heavy metal. But, this wasn't a situation where these people peaked in the parking lot. They went on the...
I would hope not.
Yeah. What's very interesting is that some of the folks in it have really embraced their appearance, their moment. Graham who's known as the Graham of Dope, wrote a memoir.
What did he wind up doing in his life after that?
He had a career. He moved to Ocean City. In fact, they all went to Ocean City after the concert, and Graham never left. And he had a family and a career, several different careers, and had an interesting life. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he was able to document and breathe more into his life and who he is and who he was than just that one moment on camera, that one minute on camera. He's had a whole lot, and everybody else is the same. David Helvey is writing a book. ZZ Ludwig, who at the time was known as Robbie Ludwig, he's writing a book. I'm sure, who knows? It's just great that everybody has all embraced this and taken it to whatever level they want to. And we're very grateful that they've shown up at screenings like we just had. And we hope to continue that, connection into the coming years.
Did you ever hear from Judas Priest?
Well, we have over the years. We have been fortunate to develop a relationship with their management, never the individual members, but their management. And through them, management, the band is very accommodating and cordial and has written, favorably. And certainly in interviews, they've been favorable to us. Rob Halford even devoted 3 pages to in his second book to Heavy Metal Parking Lot. And we basically were not sure where this would go way back when, because we did appropriate their music and image. And we were such wise asses. I mean, I take responsibility for this. Our copyright is pirate video. I mean, I would never do that now, but that's what it says. But it's like we borrowed it. But we tried to, we got backstage when they returned in 1988 to the Capitol Center, because really our goal at the time, after we made this and got limited, response and circulating it, because it was an odd time. You couldn't really get it programmed. It just was, like I said, festivals wouldn't take video. But the Telscreen at the Cap Center, we wanted to screen it there before Judas Priest's next appearance, which was 2 years later. So Cellar Door Concerts got us backstage passes, and we met with the tour management, the touring people, who were more interested in like the bootleg shirts that they saw rather than the fact that we appropriated their music. We kind of pitched it as, look, this is a tribute to the band and the fans. And they got it. But they were also real kind of lackadaisical. Well, they were just businessmen. That was their priority at the moment. And all we wanted to do was screen it for the fans inside the arena. But they said, don't use this before we go on, because don't show it, because our music's in there. And I totally got it. Once John and I heard that, we were like, okay, but the arena balked on it. They didn't want to do it, but we gave them copies. That's when we gave copies to the band through their management. Never heard from them.
This is back in 88.
2 years later.
88,
yeah.
A long time ago, but we didn't hear from them. And we were definitely flying below the radar. Our piece of work was not something that would really cross their, they'd have any particular, it wasn't on their level really of fame and success and, accomplishment. So, but they did eventually hear about it, because a lot of times, oftentimes when they're interviewed by music journalists, the question would come around, have you seen Heavy Metal Parking Lot, and what do you think of it? And eventually they had to, I guess, seek it out and watch it so they could reply to that very often posed question from many, many journalists. And to this day, I'm sure they're asked about it all the time. They appreciate it, so they acknowledge it.
Let me ask you guys, you've both had careers as filmmakers in the DC area. And, I thought this movie, it weirdly holds up in that this idea of you just run the video, it goes viral, people behave like knuckleheads or geniuses or whatever, or both. But what seems so incredibly different to me is DC itself. I mean, you were there at the Capitol Center. It doesn't exist anymore, obviously, but it seems like you sort of captured the peak of the suburbs. The kids you're filming, you got the sense these kids had never set foot in DC. In those days, the teams played out in the suburbs. The concerts were in the suburbs. There was this sort of like rednecky culture that you were capturing. Could this be made anymore? Like how has DC changed in these years?
Yeah, it has changed. Yes, it's changed a lot. You certainly have, I think now that we did catch this moment in time, it's almost an anthropological study. It is an anthropological study, and that's why it still resonates with people. But yeah, that element of society, working class suburban kids is, I don't know, you'll find them inside or immediately around the Beltway that much anymore. I think you have to just go a little farther out in the hinterlands. You'll find them. But you don't see it here just because of, just the impact of ultimately how successful the DC region has been over the last several decades, and the economic growth and the prosperity that's come to it has maybe changed the socioeconomic dynamics of the immediately surrounding suburbs these days.
Not as many Trans Ams in the parking lot.
No.
There's no parking lot.
More
It has
more Priuses and Teslas than Trans Ams.
Yeah.
Yes.
So looking back at it, what does this movie tell you about, this city, this region we live in?
I think this thing has resonance and is evergreen because everybody can relate to it over the years. I mean, and I certainly, my line has always been, you were either at that concert or you sat next to someone in homeroom who was at that concert. And you kind of just, by osmosis, you just knew it. You knew concert. Look, everybody has music that kind of leaps into your head. That is your soundtrack when you're young and kind of discovering your music journey, your music path, if you will. And that's kind of what you embrace. We all do that. And so this was what fandom is just universal. And so people can really, I think, identify with this. I mean, we made Neil Diamond parking lot 10 years later when we realized we had something going after we dug it out of mothballs. It's 180 degrees in the other direction, but the passion and the fandom, the music fandom, it's still there. It's the same, I mean, and that's what I think is at the core, thankfully, of what we were fortunate to capture.
Do you think that's why it stuck with people?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's nothing, you can kind of look at this, because of the broad comedy and if not outright exploitation that we did of the people that were taping. I don't think I personally would want to be drunk and inebriated and immortalized when I was a teenager. So in that respect, hats off and our eternal gratitude to those who are still accepting of the fact that we did get that, and without any permission, we just did it. And then,
well, these days, all of them are immortalized constantly.
Right. Well, that's just it. Everybody. I mean, this is a different world now where stuff is. And again, this didn't take root for years. And then once everybody had kind of gone on with their lives,
even as far back as the 80s, is the changing DC, landscape, really, how it changed, and it lost a lot of its, not rural, but southern roots to it. We certainly had awareness, and we didn't get a chance to really do that much documentation or filming of it, but things that were slipping away from DC at the time. And we thought heavy metal would be there for a long time. There were other things like country western bars on the outskirts of town. And when Jeff and I would find the remaining juke joints in town, because we were really interested in the disappearing old school R&B music scene, we had awareness of that, and we didn't really get that much of a chance to document it, but heavy metal parking lots kind of surreptitiously covered some of that.
Well, just as a child of Washington, I guess I would have been 13 when that concert happened. Boy, it's really cool to watch. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it. We're going to keep it going as long as we can.
Yes. We enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Living after midnight.
Hi, it's CityCast CEO David Plotz. I am here with Richard Reyes Gavilan, the Executive Director of the DC Public Library. Richard, welcome to CityCast DC. Hello, it is good to see you again, old friend also.
Good to see you, David. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So it's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and DC is marking that anniversary with an exhibition. What is District Vibes American Pride? What is the central argument you're making in that exhibit?
District Vibes is a very sort of refreshing, fragmented, serendipitous take on many of the personalities and movements and events that make DC so special and underscore DC's outsized influence on American culture. It's a lot of fun. It is, for the most part, light and encyclopedic, takes place here at the MLK Library. And there's just tons and tons of morsels, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you about it.
Wait, so who's featured? Who and what did they contribute? What delightful person is there?
Oh, man, there are so many delightful people. We are literally profiling, 75, 100 different people. Some of them are household names in DC: Duke Ellington, Marvin Gaye, Chuck Brown.
My kid did not know Marvin Gaye was from DC. That was a pleasure to tell him about that.
Well, that's a shame. And I guess this is why we have Marvin Gaye profiled in the exhibition. We actually have an old DC jukebox where you or kids or anybody could come and you can press the button and you can get the song that you want on a CD, including, What's Going On from Marvin Gaye, which is widely considered one of the maybe 5 best albums of the 20th century. For example, we've got Van McCoy. Do you know Van McCoy?
Nope.
He was a big-time record producer. He wrote the song The Hustle.
Oh, I always knew that had a DC tie. I didn't know that was why.
We profile people in the arts like Gene Davis, who is one of the founders of the Washington Color School. We've got a great Gene Davis study on display. Alma Thomas, who is one of the preeminent American artists of the 20th century. So stuff like that. It's all over the place. Paul Hubbard, he was the inventor of the football huddle. You might say, how is a football huddle invented?
I know why. Gallaudet.
That's exactly right. Gallaudet University. These guys were getting all their signals stolen because they were signing their signals. And they said, hey, why don't we get into a circle? And that was the birth of what we know as the football huddle.
So District Vibes is not just downtown at the MLK. So it's getting out into the neighborhoods. How are you getting it out into all 8 wards of the city?
It is important for us to always remember that not everyone goes downtown or goes downtown very often. So we've got little satellite exhibitions in one library in every ward of the city. Anacostia and Benning in wards 8 and 7, Lamont Riggs, the Chevy Chase Library, Mount Pleasant Library, the Southwest Library in Ward 6, and the Woodridge Library in Ward 5. It's kind of an amuse-bouche sort of satellite exhibition. You'll see some images, you'll see some text, but for this one, I will say it is absolutely worth it to come down to the MLK Library and experience this exhibition in its entirety.
So you have District Vibes in the library, in the main library, and in all these other libraries. What other programming do you have planned this summer for people who want to engage with District Vibes in some other way?
One of the panels in the exhibition, and I know that you're an avid bicyclist, so you would appreciate this. We talk about the evolution of urban bicycling in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was integral to urban bicycling. The city paved 157 miles of dirt roads back in the mid-1800s to facilitate bicycle use. You know, the penny farthing, the large wheel bicycle from the 1850s. When that moved to the more traditional safety bicycle, there were 2 men in Washington, D.C. who adapted that bicycle for women, taking into consideration women wearing long dresses. The first women's bicycle club and the first women bikers were here in Washington, D.C. And so we will celebrate that from now, July 25th. We are going to host this organization called the Potomac Wheelmen. They're doing the evolution of the bicycle. So we're doing a demonstration. We're doing a talk. We actually have one of those crazy penny farthings on display at the library. And I cannot believe people could actually get on those things. I mean, the seat is like 6 or 8 feet off the ground. I mean, it's crazy. So that's a big program that we're having on the 25th.
Richard, tell me about this vintage car show and Pinewood Derby race that's happening on Saturday, August 15th.
We've got a vintage car show here under the loggia outside the library. So we're working with some of the local car clubs to bring some restored cars here. And we're also going to have a Pinewood Derby race on the same day. So that Saturday, people are going to be able to build their own wooden racers, and they're going to be able to send them along G Street here at the library, which is pretty cool. The biggest program that we will put on, that we've actually been putting on for a few years, but it works very perfectly with the District Vibes exhibition, is Art All Night. And you've probably been to Art All Night, David, where we will close down the entirety of G Street, and we will have a whole host of bands and vendors, and probably about 10,000 people will come and interact with live music. And so that's what we would consider sort of a bookend to the exhibition, which closes officially on September 27th.
Richard Reyes-Gavilan, thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
District 5's American Pride is open now at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library and at satellite locations across all 8 wards. Also, just a heads up that the Vintage Car Show and Pinewood Derby race that Richard mentioned is on Saturday, August 15th. For more information and the full lineup, head to dclibrary.org. Thanks for listening to CityCast DC.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and for goodness sakes, subscribe to our morning newsletter. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.